Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7, season 2. Today we're going to talk with Sara Waskow from FranNet. Before I bring Sara in, as we continue to introduce the broker community to you, the franchisor, and obviously prospective franchisees, we're trying to dive into how do you best work with the folks here. What I'm really excited about with Sara is she has a multi-layer background, which we'll get into in a second, as she is a franchisee as well. So there's various insights that she's going to provide. Obviously, everybody out there is trying to figure out a way to how do we get to this great return. So Sara, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's start with this. Even though, years in the future, someone's going to watch back at this and they're going to say, well, what is that COVID thing? It's well gone. But in the moment, how are you navigating it? How are you dealing with it? Give me some insight into that as a business owner, as a franchise broker, anything to help position our conversation.
Yes, great question. So you know what? I am meeting people where they are. Everybody has a different mindset and a different risk tolerance. So when this kind of first started, I noticed some people continuing on through the process. Others were slowing down and others just kind of hit the brakes. So it's almost like what I would say is maybe a different client that we might be looking for right now, because some of the clients definitely recognize that there's going to be opportunity on the other side, and they might have a little bit higher risk tolerance, and some that are fearful. We just have to understand that they need some time and just, as I said, kind of meet people where they are. This is not a time to try to convince or persuade anyone that it's time to start a business. So we just try to educate and provide the information, and then they can assess if they feel it's the right time for them.
I mean, obviously everything is fascinating right now. And as we look back at this from a history standpoint, especially as it relates back to franchising, I'm sure it's going to paint some interesting pictures. But if you think about the buyer, if you really want to get ahead as a franchisee, you try to figure out a way to get into a system at the most value positioned model. So that could mean buying real estate at the right price point. It could be getting into territories when it's not completely full. But maybe give some insight into that, into how the buyer could take advantage of this, or what is the opportunity that exists here?
Yeah, really great question. So for one thing, interest rates are very low. And so the buyer could get money at a much lower rate than previously. It might be a little too late to benefit from this, but also the SBA is offering 6 months of payments if the loan is funded by September 27th. So that's 6 months of payments that they're covering that the franchisee does not have to pay back. So that is another advantage. Now, if it's brick and mortar, there's no way it would be funded by the end of September, but I definitely have some clients in process now, with their loans out for approval, looking at non-brick and mortar businesses that can very likely be funded by the end of September. So that's a huge advantage. Unfortunately, some landlords are going to be losing their tenants if they go out of business, and they're going to want to be filling those spaces. So I also view it as an advantage from that perspective, that it has been a landlord's market up until now, and I think it will change a little bit more towards a tenant's market. And also, franchisors are offering some, benefits. So right now, everybody's doing virtual discovery days. So they may be able to save a little money on travel, for example. Some of them are delaying when the franchisee would start paying royalties. So it really could be a very economical time to start a business.
I would imagine in your position, a lot of what you've done on the broker side is you are coaching people. I come to you, I say, I'm interested in becoming a franchisee, or you network with me and say, this is what franchising is. And I come to the table and you're saying, here's the inventory of brands that I represent, which then gives the buyer at least a viewpoint into what category should they be looking at. And I would imagine, because I mean, there's certainly a sales aspect to franchise development, but probably the best brands are the ones that don't sell. They facilitate or answer the questions of the buyer as they're going through the process. Do you feel like now more than ever, it's more of a coaching role? Like you're almost part therapist to these folks that are thinking about buying?
I have defined myself as a therapist, so it's kind of funny that you asked that a little bit, just because, I have to really get people thinking about what it is that's important to them. And we ask a lot of questions, like really trying to get them to think about what their expectations are from that business, and why would a business, how could it be an advantage to them? What are they seeking to gain through business ownership? A lot of times clients will migrate to a business because of what it does, and we really try to get them thinking more about what they want the business to do for them. So what is it? Is it, more time with their family? I honestly think now that more people are working, from home, and so much has changed, that people are recognizing the value of that family time, and maybe pursuing an option that is going to give them more flexibility. So we definitely do feel, I don't know if therapists, sometimes it is just to try to counsel and coach them on, what really that end result will look like for them.
I would like to switch our conversation into working with franchisors. So let me try framing this, and I would love your opinion on it. If someone came to me and said, "What website company should we work with to build out our site?" I would definitely have recommendations based on the skill sets of the website company, that based on the experience or what my other clients have said on how they've used them in the past, to give some sort of insight into that. But I would also have the asshole test, which is, if they're just not a nice human being, I'm probably not sending them that business. So there is a portion of that comes into this. In a world where franchisors are they're so focused on the number, like it's spinning a magic wheel and saying we're going to have 50 units next year, it almost pressures them to sell at the beginning. And then some of the pressures or incentives that they try throwing in front of you, 100% of franchise fee, what we're going to kick back to you, ends up almost being a little bit too rich, maybe, that like the game's being played. So from your seat, if I'm a franchisor, one, how important is it? How much are you judging me as a human being? How much are you judging my brand as viable for the candidate that you're about to make the introduction for? How much purpose or meaning? Obviously, it needs to be right for you financially to reward you for the hard work that you put on the front end. But how much does that last part weigh of the percentage of the franchise fee that the broker gets in exchange for making that connection?
Well, great question. I'm going to try to remember all the questions that you asked.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. But, I understand what you're saying, but the franchisors that are in our inventory, what we want is franchisors that are looking for the best fit, not just focused on how many franchisees they can bring into their system. Because if they're focused on a fit, then it's a win-win for everyone. And so it's important, and we try to make sure that our clients understand, and that the franchisors that we partner with are focused on awarding franchises, not just selling franchises. And I tell my clients, if the franchisor that you're working with starts making you feel like there's any pressure, or like if this is kind of a sales situation, let me know, because really that is not what this is about. They're evaluating you just like you're evaluating them, and this should be a mutual fit. And culture, you mentioned kind of the asshole thing. I mean, culture fit's also really, really important. And so, as I told you, we ask our clients a lot of questions, and because at FranNet, we have conferences where our franchisors attend, and we really try to get to know those franchisors and understand the culture of their brand, so that we can make that culture fit, because the franchisee's signing an agreement for 10 years. And so we want them to be comfortable with that partnership, really, over the course of their time in business with that franchise. And then lastly, as far as the fee, honestly, I can speak for myself and probably the majority of my colleagues too. We don't even look at the fee, because if we're focused on the fee, we're not focused on the client. And so as good franchise brokers are going to focus on the client's needs. I tell my, client, I don't work for the franchisor. The franchisor pays me if we make a fit, but I work for you and I have your best interest in mind. And so ultimately, if I know somebody's moving forward, it's at that time that I look at the fee, because I just don't want to be focused on that. I really want to be focused on the client's needs. And I am confident that when I focus on the client, then everything else works out.
I think you just exploded the brains of so many human beings that are unfortunately on the broker side that sells for the fee. So first of all, I appreciate you saying that. When I fell into franchising, I fell in love with the idea that someone was risking their life savings to try to make a difference. And we're obviously on the storytelling side, but that felt amazing to fight for the franchisee. And what's disappointing of our industry, at least to me, is there is no regulation of the broker community, that there can be great brokers or coaches that exist that say the line that you just said, that said, hey, franchisors, you're wasting your time and energy on the wrong thing there. And then there's brokers that are just completely trying to convince someone why they should buy a brand based on how much money they get. And look, the whole industry, I would say, has probably learned significantly over the last 10 years. In retrospect, all the franchisees that were placed into the frozen yogurt brands, and given there probably wasn't much a broker community could do at that point, because the consumer, the buyer, the franchisee is beating down the door and saying, I want self-serve frozen yogurt. And you're like, I don't know about the viability of this. They are all the same. They all serve the same product. It is a craveable item, but they're going to struggle on point of differentiation. You say that it falls on deaf ears. But we learn from that. And now we start saying, like, how do we make sure that the data point as a broker is that eventually you have the lines of, I took candidate X and my average candidates have been in the franchise systems for more than 5 years. Something that says like longevity is key. So long-winded statement to say, I really appreciate you saying that, because I don't feel enough people say that. And I don't feel there's enough transparency to the buyer that says, this is how this works, but I work for you. And same in real estate. Like, an agent is going to get paid when you buy a home, but they're ultimately not going to push you into buying the wrong home. They're going to work with you to find the right thing. So I greatly appreciate that.
It's a huge decision, and you brought up, that's their livelihood. And I would so much rather somebody say no than say yes and regret that decision. It's huge. And honestly, some people just aren't cut out for it. And sometimes I tell them, you really may be better off in a job. If you really need to make X amount of dollars in your first 3 to 6 months, that's probably better a fit for being an employee.
Do you think it's going to get at all confusing? Not for the broker community or for franchising specifically, but the next wave in a downturn economy, first is a bunch of lower level positions that get eliminated, and that drives up unemployment. The next is over $100,000 in earnings, which actually ends up being an amazing pool of franchise buyers, which is why franchising works kind of opposite of economic conditions. When things go bad, franchising goes up because the buyers come on the woodwork. But there are going to be people that have been comfortably making $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 that now their job has gotten shaky, turbulent, and now there's a layoff. And now they're looking at their next thing, and they look at franchising. What I'm hearing from you is that the advice that you would give to them is make sure you're not going after just salary replacement, because you're talking about at a minimum a 10-year relationship.
Yes, exactly. So there's a lot more to it than just their income, and a big difference obviously in being a business owner is that you're building an asset, and so that's different than being an employee. And when you're an employee, basically you have one customer, and that is your employer providing, that income. So some people are thinking about, business ownership as a way to diversify and create another stream of income and kind of create some income security versus job security through that method. I think, these last few months and with everything going on with the stock market and everything has really piqued people's interest in diversifying their portfolio.
Sir, do you feel like your mindset as a franchisee gives you such an asset because you're able to evaluate the brand in a different way than someone who has not been specifically a franchisee of a brand?
Absolutely. I mean, one thing that differentiates FranNet is that we are franchisees. So I'm the owner of FranNet of Dallas Fort Worth. So I experience my experience as a franchisee helps me a lot, being a franchise consultant. And then, as you mentioned, I'm also a franchisee with a fitness brand with my husband. And so I can definitely relate from both sides of the coin. And I do think that is a big help.
If you think back to when you made both of those decisions to become a franchisee in both of them, when I've talked with franchisees and I've tried to put it into the easiest buckets, but the consistency is I buy brand X because I believe in the leadership. The cost to get in, how much I can make is sound. The product, I see a true point of differentiation and I believe in it. I can buy in the territory that I want. And lastly, and it should probably be the first thing, is when I ask franchisees if they would do it again, they say absolutely. So the validation part.
Yep.
When you're evaluating a franchisor, are you looking at those? Are there any other categories that are important that you're judging to help find a conclusion or create a conclusion that franchise X makes sense?
Oh yeah. I mean, your list was really good. I would say, the validation process is really key. And what I tell my clients is, when you're talking to these franchisees, see if they're people that you want to be in business with. Basically, you're not really in business with them, but alongside them, because one of the big advantages that I see that everyone should have in a franchise is the other franchisees, collaborating with them, working together to for the same end result, for a common cause, and bounce ideas off of each other and things like that. So I get a lot of value from my FranNet franchisees, and so that is part of FranNet's vetting process is the validation and what those franchisees are sharing, and yes, would they do it again? And is the earning potential, as you mentioned kind of in an earlier comment, going to match up with what these people are expecting when they come out of corporate America? Now, we all know we can't tell them how much they're going to make, but how are the other franchisees doing? And is that in line with what the expectations are from our clients? And that's a big factor in their being added and approved to be in our inventory.
The last question that I want to ask is just the pulse on things right now. Now we're obviously hearing the PR stories, and it's like if I've ever been to a franchise conference, whether it was 2008 or it was 2018, and I said, "How are things going?" It's always like, "Oh, everything is going amazing." So there's always been a sense of false positivity in franchising, no matter what it is. But you have the pulse on the ground. Are you feeling positive of the next 6 months? Do you see that a downturn in the economy is going to be good for new first-time franchisees getting into systems? Do you feel like franchisors are going to get to the other side of this? What is the pulse that you have on what's going on?
Yeah, my pulse is positive. It really is. The franchisors are really doing a lot. Our franchise partners are doing a lot to support their franchisees. I've really been impressed with how quickly they adapted and offered some things to help their franchisees. I feel I've always been an advocate for franchising, but even more so now, I just am grateful for that support and really kind of knowing somebody has my back to help me be successful. I think it would be even, it's a difficult time, but trying to do it on my own as an independent business owner would certainly be a struggle. So for somebody that wants to own a business, knowing that they have that support system is key. But, especially in a difficult time like this, it's even more relevant. And so I really do see a lot of positive for the franchise industry once we get to the other side of this.
I mean, part of this and part of battling through and the complexities, and the complexities are in multiple stages, whether it's race relations or it's coronavirus or it's an election. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
complexities to life right now. But I will say, positivity ends up being part of the mindset of positivity ends up helping to deliver the outcome. So I
Yep.
appreciate that pulse. I want to thank you for the time that you provided me today. It was wonderful talking to you. I'm looking forward to hearing how things pan out over the next few months. And obviously stay safe. Sarah, I really appreciate our conversation.
Thanks, Nick. My pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, take care.
Take care.